Indonesia or in English. Thanks a lot. And now, please welcome Pak Rajendra, our FAO representative based in Jakarta, but now currently in Timor-Leste. Over to you, Pa.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Dear colleagues, partners, peatland experts, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of FAO to this first session of the webinar series, Advancing Peatland Monitoring. Let me first begin by thanking our partners at the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia, UNEP, and the Global Peatlands Initiative partners for their dedication to promote the enhancement of peatland monitoring in Indonesia and worldwide. I would also like to express our sincere gratitude to the German government, who is supporting the Global Peatlands Initiative project through the International Climate Initiative. FAO is assisting countries in managing the peatlands ecosystems, supporting sustainable livelihoods, enhancement of environmental services, and reduction of negative impacts due to drainage and degradation and fires. Peatland monitoring has proven to be a challenging task. However, we believe that it's key to maintain peatland richness and planning effective restoration measures. Thanks to our distinguished group of speakers from University of Leicester, University of Nottingham, C4, and TerraMotion, as well as my colleagues from FAO today, we'll be hearing very interesting examples of innovative tools and approaches to peatland monitoring. This webinar series is a continued support provided by FAO to the Peatland Restoration, Formation and Monitoring System, PRIMS, of Indonesia. Indonesia's efforts to monitor peatlands were initially linked to the devastating consequences of fires due to the high degree of peatlands degradation. Indonesia, however, has made commitments to reduce peatland emissions and will need to further develop peatland monitoring tools to demonstrate its impact. One example is the inclusion of peatlands in the nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies of Indonesia. These mechanisms need, however, effective ways of tracking progress. Advancing with peatland monitoring will ensure this target is within the reach. On the other hand, the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030 prompts countries and stakeholders alike to restore key ecosystems such as peatlands to achieve our targets of the Paris Agreement, as well as several SDGs and the upcoming biodiversity targets as well. Technology transfer and cooperation can help us confirm if we are on the right track towards ecosystem restoration and allocating resources efficiently. After these sessions, FAO and GPI project partners will be organizing sessions in French and Spanish for those who are interested in learning more about peatland monitoring in countries like Peru and the Congo Basin. We hope this session would inspire cooperation and knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer by featuring the results and lessons learned from different regions. Once again, thank you very much. The presence of your here has been overwhelming. We already see like 85 participants here. I hope the number would be still growing. So thanks again for joining this webinar. I see tweets have been sent, and I have also just recently retweeted saying happening now. So please tweet, retweet from FAO Forestry so that more people could join. And I would like to wish you all the best. And thank you very much. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Pak Rajendra, for those inspiring words. So I'm sorry, I think the presentation's not showing correctly. Am I?
It's okay, Laura, no problem.
Okay, it's okay. Okay, so welcome again, everyone. I would just like to go through the agenda for today. So after Pak Rajendra's opening remarks, we'll have a short talk by Professor Susan Page on why monitor peatlands. Then we have Pak Wahyu Chatur Adinugroho on the application of CEPAL tools for peatland monitoring. Then we'll have our colleagues at FAO giving a short talk on the specific CEPAL tools for soil moisture monitoring. And then we'll have David Large talking about monitoring peatland subsidence. And then we'll have time for some discussion. And finally, key messages by Rupesh Bomia from C4. So on the objective of this webinar, today, the results of Indonesia's efforts to monitor peatlands will be presented in order to encourage a global discussion on the importance, challenges, and opportunities of peatland monitoring, and also give some updates of some of peatland monitoring approaches as an opening for our following sessions of the webinar series, which will be 3 sessions in French and 3 sessions in Spanish, and will address more specific peatland monitoring methods. So our focus questions for today are: what are the tools and resources available to monitor peatlands? And how can peatland monitoring tools aid decision makers and climate change mitigation results? So in general, this will be a discussion on how to advance peatland monitoring worldwide. So just to give an overview, some advances that have happened in the last years worldwide on peatland monitoring. So countries are every year more motivated in the framework of their enhanced transparency framework and to achieve national and regional targets. So peatlands have proven to be a strategic ecosystem to reach these targets. So many organizations worldwide have worked for the goal of knowledge sharing, especially on innovative satellite-based data sets. And in the case of FAO, we have developed a soil moisture monitoring module on CEPAL, also working extensively in capacity development, providing training and new tools and approaches, especially in the framework of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And in this context, technology transfer is very important to have these expert exchanges to improve methods globally. So in the case of Indonesia, at FAO, in the framework of the project, of the PRIMS project, which is Innovative Peatland Monitoring System, or PRIMS project, which ended in 2021, a new innovative satellite-based spatial data set for soil moisture monitoring was developed. And this module demonstrated good correlation with groundwater levels measured in the field, and also provides estimates of groundwater levels across large areas. And this has represented an advance towards landscape scale monitoring. Another important achievement was the development of the PGHG tool, which is developed for quickly and easily estimated greenhouse gas emissions from different land management options. And this tool was tailored for Indonesia and followed the IPCC guidelines. Also in the same project, capacity was developed through 14 agencies, and more than 100 practitioners attended the trainings to learn how to run the tools. Also from these trainings, the user manuals and training materials were also published and are there to support the independent use of these tools, and are available in English and in Bahasa. So it is also important to understand this framework initiatives that we are also trying to work towards with peatland monitoring. And one of these is the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And in this process of the UN Decade, restoration of peatlands is one of 8 thematic focus areas, trying to establish baselines and success cases, and trying to develop tools and approaches and of course, always developing capacity. So it's an opportunity to work in this framework to set science-based targets for peatland restoration, and to define how much peatlands we have to restore, by when, and selecting appropriate indicators. So some opportunities that have been identified are for advancing peatland monitoring are fire and degradation alerts and subsidence applications for reducing risk. Also, in the framework of agricultural monitoring, there's the opportunity to monitor polludiculture and sustainable practices. And on the framework of restoration, trying to test the effectiveness of landscape level rewetting. And also on the topic of socioeconomic data and indicators, how can we target action for green recovery? Also, it is an opportunity for different countries to support South-South and triangular cooperation to identify restoration and other monitoring areas. And finally, support to the IPCC wetland guidelines update. So that is all from my side, and I will just hand over to Sue. So today we'll have a talk by Professor Susan Page from the University of Leicester. Professor Susan's research is currently focused on tropical peatlands in Southeast Asia, which started in 1993, but she has also been involved in research projects on peatlands in South America, Central Africa, and England throughout her extensive career and contributions to peatland science. So thank you, Professor Susan, for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laura. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. So FAO very kindly asked me to briefly introduce why we might want to monitor peatlands. Next slide, please. And so just to give you a kind of introduction to peatlands and to why they might be important, and to why it's absolutely critical that we develop monitoring tools for peatlands, I've put together a short introduction. I think the most important thing at the present time, given the global climate crisis, is to recognise the enormous below-ground carbon stores that peatlands represent. We still don't have an accurate number of how much carbon we have in these peatlands, but what we do know is it's likely more than the world vegetation. So in terms of carbon store, peatlands are critically important. And of course, in a natural condition, peatlands have a net cooling effect on climate. Next slide, please. Peatlands also provide a range of important ecosystem services. Perhaps in terms of the talk today and the presentations today, the most important are those related to our climate, our global climate. So carbon capture and storage are absolutely critical. But sometimes peatlands have also been used for to protect and to provide livelihoods, whether that's food production or production of fibre or wood or fuel. So sometimes we find that these provisioning services are in conflict with these climate regulating services. And that's where monitoring can really play an important role. Next slide, please. We know around the world that particularly in the temperate zone and also increasingly in the tropics, that many peatlands are now being disturbed by anthropogenic activities, particularly for agriculture, forestry, and so on. Something like 80% of the peatlands in the UK, where I am based, have been influenced by human activities, and it's about the same proportion on Southeast Asian peatlands. Fortunately, some peatlands, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, the far Northern Hemisphere, are less disturbed, and that's also the case for the vast peatlands in South America and in Central Africa. Next slide, please. And that disturbance alters the functioning of our peatlands. It converts them from a carbon sink, a long-term carbon sink, into a short-term carbon source. Maybe peatlands around the world are emitting anywhere up to 5% of all human greenhouse gas emissions. So in a disturbed condition, peatlands have a net warming effect on our climate. Next slide, please. And in the light of the COP26 conference, which happened last year in November, we know that we need to make substantial cuts in greenhouse gas emissions if we're going to move towards net zero by the middle of this century. On the other hand, we know that probably global peatlands shifted from a net sink of carbon to a net source somewhere around the start of this millennium. And so it's a critical move for everybody involved in peatland conservation, peatland restoration, that we move ahead rapidly with rehabilitation measures to reduce the impact that our drained peatlands are having on our global climate. We need to bring drained peatlands back to net greenhouse gas neutrality to protect and enhance their role in climate mitigation. Next slide, please. And this is the place for the monitoring of peatlands. The monitoring of peatlands can make a really important contribution to that move towards net zero for global peatlands. Next slide, please. And I think there are four key roles that monitoring can play and contribute to global climate protection. First of all, we need to know where our peatlands are. We still don't have accurate data on peatland area and carbon stock assessment. There's a challenge there. There's a challenge to accurately map peatlands using remote sensing data. There's also a challenge that it's very difficult to make accurate carbon stock assessments without field data. And some of these sites, for example, in the Congo, are very difficult to access, hard to access sites, but those field data are critical to inform our Earth observation approaches to monitoring peatlands. Next slide, please. We can monitor peatlands to inform us. We can take information from monitoring, whether it's done on the ground or using Earth observation data, can tell us a lot about peatland condition. Are the peatlands intact? Are they degraded? What types and causes of degradation are peatlands experiencing? This can allow us to identify areas at risk and identify areas in need of restoration. The challenge here is to develop and to identify proxy data that can be used to accurately inform emissions monitoring and reporting. Next slide, please. So moving on from locating peatlands and using monitoring to inform, the next stage has to be taking action. So once we've identified peatlands that are degraded, then we need to take action, whether that's in the form of law enforcement or restoration programs to re-wet, to revegetate, and ultimately to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from our peatlands, and also, of course, to reduce fire risk, which is a key issue for peatlands, both in Southeast Asia and increasingly in the temperate zone as well. So peatland monitoring is a key part of implementing action plans for peatland protection. Next slide, please. And then finally, once we've instituted management interventions, then we need to monitor that those interventions are going in the right direction. Are our interventions actually successfully resulting in vegetation recovery, in reduced fire risk, in reduced greenhouse gas emissions? And monitoring needs to be long-term. This is so critical. So many restoration programs don't build monitoring into the strategy, and there needs to be this long-term approach to protecting our peatlands and to ensuring that corrective actions are going in the right direction. And again, I think the challenge here is for us to identify indicators and proxies that can give us that indication that our peatlands are moving in the right direction. And of course, science is moving forward quite rapidly, whether it's field-based methods such as flux towers or measuring peat surface movements, or often combined with using Earth observation data as well. So this is an exciting moment to understand how these monitoring methods for Indonesian peatlands have moved forward and the role that they can play in monitoring the success of management interventions. Next slide, please. So to summarise, really, I think the overall goal of peatland monitoring has to be to keep our peatlands wet, to keep peatlands wet that are already wet, and to re-wet and ensure that they stay wet for peatlands that have been drained and degraded in other ways. So we need to employ monitoring to identify and ensure adequate protection for our undamaged peatlands. That has to be the primary goal, to protect those undamaged sites. We need to implement effective, enduring peatland restoration measures, and we can use monitoring to check on the effectiveness of those restoration measures. And we need to develop effective mitigation techniques for drained peatlands and monitoring of those measures to ensure that they go forwards in a way that will ensure that our drained peatlands are able to balance climate and livelihood security into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Susan, for your talk. And thank you for proposing and for highlighting this challenge, this cross-cutting challenge on the use of data and the collection of data in the cycle of monitoring. So on this topic of data, I'd like to welcome Pak Wahyu Chatur Adinugroho. He is a researcher on peatland science and accomplished SEPL user. So welcome, Pak Wahyu.
Thank you, Laura. I will share my script. Thank you, Laura, for to chair the session. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian di Indonesia. Good morning, maybe in Rome. I'm Wahyu Chatur Adinugroho. Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much to FAO and the Ministry of Environment and Forestry who have given me the opportunity to participate in some of SEPL training. Today I would like to share our learn using SEPL 2, the system for Earth observation data access, processing and analysis for land monitoring that developed by FAO, and in this case using for peatland monitoring. I will present with the title Exploring the Potential of Soil Master Map that created using SEPL 2 as a proxy for groundwater level in peat. Actually, this part of my paper with our colleague from Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Peatland Restoration Agency, and Faculty of Forestry, IPB University. Okay, I will start with the background. About 47% of the world tropical peatland are in Indonesia. The latest information on the peatland area in Indonesia in detail is 13.41 million hectares. The depth of peatland varies from 50 to 1050 centimeter with a dominant depth of 50 to 300 centimeter or more or less 69% area. Peatland are currently one of the essential issues, like Sue mentioned, in the forestry sector in Indonesia also. Despite the essential role as carbon storage, some areas have experienced degradation. Degraded peatlands are very vulnerable to the threat of fire. Maintaining groundwater level in peatland at a certain level is an essential indicator of disaster vulnerability in peatland. Fire often occur in areas with low groundwater level. groundwater level has been widely used as an essential indicator for predicting fire events. In addition, groundwater level information is also needed in peatland management and restoration. However, the availability of massive and spatial groundwater level data has been one of the limiting factors on its more comprehensive application. The depth of the groundwater level and soil moisture are closely related. A correlation between field measurement data from groundwater level and soil moisture is the basis for using soil moisture as a proxy in groundwater level monitoring. This study aimed to explore the potential of soil moisture map that created using a CEPAL tool as a proxy for groundwater level in peat. The study has been done at PHU Kahayan Sebango, Pulang Pisau Regency, Central Kalimantan Province. Data from groundwater level measurement at 16 BRG stations were used to analyze the relationship between groundwater level and the resulting peat moisture map. The study also used peat hydrology unit map, topography counter map, canal network map, Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 satellite imagery. In this study, we create soil moisture map with cloud system using CEPAL. The method used to create a soil moisture map is based on Copernicus Sentinel-1 imagery. The soil moisture estimation is based on a support vector regression machine learning approach. The training the model using in situ data from International Soil Moisture Network. PySM soil moisture mapping algorithm used to create soil moisture map and process in CEPAL platform. CEPAL is online platform, open source software that allow user to access, process satellite data easily, and perform a series of customized geospatial analysis for different needs. In this study, we also create NDVI vegetation index. In this case, I create using Google Earth Engine. NDVI vegetation index also can create using a CEPAL tool. The characteristic of PHU Kahayan Sebango, the peat ecosystem area of PHU Kahayan Sebango has an area more or less 311,323 hectares with consists of cultivation and protection function. Based on the result of peat depth modeling conducted by BRG, the peat depth is between 50 cm to 649 meters. There are many canal network in this PHU area, as shown in figure from the result of the canal network mapping by BRG. The land cover in PHU Kahayan Sebango consists of forest, shrubland, agricultural land, estate, barland, built-up land, and water body. There was a significant change in 2015 compared to 2020. You can see in this figure the barland in 2015 was covered by vegetation. In 2020, even though it was only shrub. The change in cover condition in 2015 and 2020 can also be seen based on the NDVI vegetation index. You can see in this figure that we can see the green color look denser in 2020 than 2015. FAO has demonstrated that soil moisture value estimate from satellite data are reasonable proxy for estimating groundwater level. Soil moisture estimation using microwave-based radar sensors such as Sentinel-1 in remote sensing is an indirect method that can overcome the challenge that arise from measuring groundwater level in the field. You can see in the figure the result of the soil moisture map at PHU Kahayan Sebango using Sentinel-1 imagery process using the soil moisture map from CEPAL model. You can see in the figure value of soil moisture extract from soil moisture map. The highest humidity value is in February. In here, February, the highest value, while the lowest humidity occurred in August. This condition can also be seen in soil moisture map. You can see the different color in soil moisture map on February and August. The color in February darker than August. It means that have a higher value on soil moisture in February. Soil moisture is closely related to the season. February is the rainy season, while August is the dry season. After August, there was increased soil moisture until February. After February, the soil moisture began to decrease along with dry season until August. This indicator can be used as an indicator of preparedness against vulnerability on peatland. From 2015 to 2020, there is a trend increasing soil moisture. We can illustrate also the positive impact of intervention that have been carried out to increase the groundwater level through canal blocking. In the PHU Kahian Sebango, so positive value with the value is 0.597 is observed between soil moisture gathered from the soil moisture map and groundwater level from the field. This correlation indicates that if there is an increase in soil moisture, there will increase in groundwater level also. The existing groundwater level monitoring stations are mainly located in agricultural land cover that cover with the vegetation. This factor may also cause this low correlation because we use the Sentinel-1 data. The Sentinel-1 data EC-band SAR data has limited in area with vegetation cover because the higher frequency sensor cannot penetrate the canopy. Finally, I am going to show the conclusion that our study soil moisture map can be produced based on Sentinel-1 imagery using the free and open tool SEPAL based on cloud computing infrastructure. There is a correlation between soil moisture map and groundwater level. However, the response to land cover varies. There is high intensity in area covered with dense vegetation where the sensor cannot penetrate the canopy. The vegetation index can capture the trend of land cover sink. So in its implementation, the soil moisture map can be combined with the vegetation index as proxy for estimating groundwater level on peat. I think that's all, Laura. Thanks for your attention. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekalian. Now I give time back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Pak Wahuyu, for sharing your experience as a SEPAL user, and congratulations on your results. Also, I'd like to say hi to Pak Budi Warhana from the Peat and Mangrove Restoration Agency, and also highlight the work that the Peat and Mangrove Restoration Agency and other Indonesian agencies have done on peat restoration. And well, thank you, Pak Wahuyu, and congratulations again. Now I'd like to welcome our FAO colleagues, Andreas Vollrath, Forestry and Remote Sensing Expert at FAO, and Pablo Martin, Remote Sensing and Restoration Monitoring Expert, also at FAO. They will elaborate a little bit on the development of these SEPAL tools. So give me just 1 second, I'll share your presentation. So welcome, Pablo and Andreas. I haven't shared my screen.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here, and it's a pleasure to contribute to this webinar about peatland monitoring. So in this presentation, we will be speaking about some of the tools that you can find in FALCIPAL platform. One of the tools is the one that just Pakwayu presented, but we have others that my colleague Andreas will be speaking about. And I basically will be very focused on the soil moisture mapping that you can find in the FALCIPAL platform, and showing some results from Indonesia. Next slide, please. So this presentation has a brief introduction about the state of peatlands and restoration. Then I will talk a little bit about this soil moisture mapping module that we have and that was developed under the PRIMS project. This project is the acronym for Peatland Restoration Information Monitoring System. Then after testing this tool on Indonesia, we had some ideas on how to continue with the peatland monitoring work using SLIPAL. And then a brief summary and some conclusions. Next slide. So we are facing a huge challenge to restore peatlands in the world. 99% of all peatlands are degraded, basically, and we are lacking good data and methods to monitor this restoration. We know that water levels are related to greenhouse gas emissions, and is one fundamental action that we can take to tackle this degradation and these emissions, to raise the water level, and also is very directly related to fires. So we developed some years ago this innovative radar satellite methodology and algorithm. We adapted it from a published algorithm, and we tested on Indonesia a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. So the soil moisture mapping principle is very easy for those that for the big audience. We know that radar and all radar sensors, in particular, we use Sentinel-1, but all radar sensors are sensitive to the properties of the soil, and especially to the one of these characteristics is the moisture of the soil, the humidity. We know that Sentinel-1 is relatively sensitive to soil moisture in open areas and shallow soils. And that's why we have this limitation, and the C-band of the radar does not penetrate dense canopies or dense forests. Also, another interesting thing is that Sentinel covers Indonesia every 12 days. So this is very nice for monitoring and to keep track of what is happening in peatland areas. Next, please. So what we did was to test this soil moisture mapping, this soil moisture product, with real measures taken in the field. And we saw that our soil moisture maps were very good correlated with real groundwater level measurements taken in the field. The correlations I'm showing here about the results for 9 stations, but we had like 25 stations scattered throughout the whole country. And for these points, these locations, we got very nice correlations between the simulated soil moisture and the real groundwater levels. Next one. So all this data and all the maps that we created using soil moisture information were uploaded into the PRIMS portal. So the good thing is that we have from a few number of points, few number of information or stations. If you click again, another image will appear. Yeah, so from these few scattered field points, we are able to map millions or hundreds of thousands of hectares in the country with this limiting penetration that I mentioned before. And also you can process all these soil moisture maps. You can calculate different statistics. You can calculate linear trends. You can see what is happening in the dry and wet seasons. You can calculate monthly means or do time series analysis. And we are able to upload, due to this time resolution of the satellite, we can renew and update the maps every 2 weeks. Next one. So we have these limitations that I was speaking about using Sentinel-1. We saw that we had a large number of locations with field data and water level and groundwater level measurements, covering a wide geographic distribution. And using the information on these locations, we were able to extrapolate and infer where else in the country our model is able to work. So this is the green area that you can see in the map. And then the red area will be very dense forest that radar cannot penetrate and cannot retrieve accurate information on soil moisture. So if we get more field data in more locations under different, let's say, canopy conditions or forest structure conditions, we will improve the accuracy of our model. And we will see where this is more likely to function or where this is more likely to be accurate. And also we were thinking that having data on pit depth or using multi-temporal SIR mosaics can improve all this model. Next one. Yeah, we'll leave here the floor for Andreas to talk about future steps.
Yeah, thank you, Pablo, and hello from my side. So yeah, as Pablo mentioned, all these soil moisture models, they can detect the trends and anomalies, but there might be some room for improvements in future in terms of absolute accuracy. So for example, one limitation was that this model that we have on CPOL, it's already fixed. It works on a global scale. So in order to integrate it with local data and maybe also add information on peat depth, things that could improve these estimates, we basically tested at the end of the PRIMS project as a feasibility study if we can use, first of all, local ground data from Indonesia that is then calibrated to the Sentinel-1, and if we can directly model the groundwater level. So instead of getting the soil moisture that we get out of the Python, we basically go direct to our indicator variable. And as you can see, this actually worked out quite well. So it's basically the same model, just adopted from Greifeneder, that is anyway calibrated to the national field data. We can say that, of course, like with more data, quantity, quality, and time, this could be even further improved. Next slide, please. Another application that could be used in CPOL is that we have access to this very high resolution planet data, this planet NICFI base maps. And we have this multi-view capability, which makes it really easy to, for example, compare different mosaics from different months, and also to compare it, for example, to very high resolution Google data. And one of the potential applications of this is, for example, to verify canal blocking, as you can see on this slide. Next slide, please. Another module that is already available and could potentially be used is the CPAVE model, the CPOL Planet Active Fires Explorer. What this module does is it takes recent but also historical fire alerts from different products such as firms or weirs that are basically very low resolution. And the issue with those low resolution data is that there's usually a lot of false detection or missing detections. And in order basically to verify it remotely, we have access to daily planet 3-meter data that can then be used, as you can see in the lower picture, to actually verify if the fire is present or not. Next slide, please. Yeah, and there we're already at our summary. So as you could see in the last presentation, but also in this one as presented by Pablo, that with the CIPOL platform, our aim is to break barriers to make easier access to the state-of-the-art remote sensing approaches, and that we basically implement these open source remote sensing tools, adapt them, and try to give people easy access. So it's very nice to see that that people in Indonesia actually use those tools and get good data out of it. And also, it's good to see that our soil moisture retrieval actually works to detect trends and finally also detect if peatlands are on their way to restoration or are restored, and that we also can relate it to groundwater level that serves more as an indicator. As presented, also local calibration is possible with ground data collected in the field directly in Indonesia. That will also allow for direct groundwater level monitoring and also implement other variables such as peat depth, for example. But good quality of ground data is fundamental. And last but not least, also the people who do the work is important. So I also put in this image. And with this, I'm at the end. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Andreas and Pablo, for your insightful presentation. So now we have some time to take some questions from the questions and answers box. So first, we have a question by Gusti Ansari to Professor Susan Page. That you would like to reply to this live. So how big is the peat monitoring? Is it 30% of the peatland area? Professor Susan, over to you.
Hi, Prof. Gusti. Thanks very much for your question. I don't know that anybody knows the answer to that. It's a really good question. How effective is peat monitoring, and over what large, over what area is peat monitoring taking place at the current time? I don't know if any of the other participants in the session know the answer to that. I suspect they don't. And to be quite honest, one of the first steps in peat monitoring is to actually know where your peatlands are. And even in the UK, we don't yet have a definitive peatland map for the UK. So answering that question really requires that we know the area of peatland before we better understand the area that could be being monitored. So it's a really interesting question. Thanks, Gusti.
I can take the questions by anonymous attendee.
Thank you, Andreas.
So I don't know exactly, like the first question, if I understand it correctly, how can SMM be known by the general public? So it is open source tool. It's available on CIPOL. So with a couple of clicks, you basically get this data out. And as Pablo mentioned, like it's available every 12 days. So you kind of can detect trends of drying that should give you a rough estimate on your risk of fire. That should be possible. And I also see the question, can L-band data be used in CIPOL? So in the way we use it for the soil moisture module, it's really tailored to Sentinel-1, also because we have the limitation that we don't have an freely available data for L-band in the same timely repeat as it is for Sentinel-1. So the only systems that are up right now is ALOS, Pulsar, and the Argentinian SAOCOM mission in L-band, but the data is both not free. It can be theoretically processed on CIPOL because you basically have certain libraries such as Snap software to basically process it, but there's something pre-tailored as it is for the Python module, which makes it really easy to get those soil moisture maps. So it's more complicated. You need to buy the data. in future, this is likely going to change with the US-Indian NISAR mission that will give access to 12-day repeat L-band data globally. And this will be definitely a game changer for this, because also this should overcome some of the limitations with regard to vegetation. Thanks.
And I can answer one question from Tubagusam Risky. Is asking from what depth the soil moisture was being measured. So originally we adapted this algorithm from Felix Kaivenida. Originally this the soil moisture unit here is the percent of volume of water in 1 cubic meter. So what we are retrieving here with this simulated modeling is about, let's say, what is the final size of the pixel is 1 hectare. So we can say it's like a proxy of measurement of what is happening in the first meter in this 1 hectare area, and this is the volume of water that is in this first meter of depth, let's say. And this is a proxy of what is the groundwater level in this area as well. But of course, this has to be calibrated, and one of the best things that we can think of is to use the real groundwater level data to calibrate the model instead of the soil moisture. That was what the algorithm was using at the beginning.
Thank you, Pablo and Andreas, for your answers. So I'd like to take Paul Brugge Sinta's question. So if there is an ascendant trend in soil moisture between 2015 and 2020, is it just related to the impacts of restoration activities, or should rainfall also be considered as a factor that contributes to it? Would you like to take this question, Pak Wahyu?
Yes, thank you, Clara, to remind the question. Thank you, Pak Brugge, for the criticism of the question. Yes, I agree that rainfall will have impact in the soil moisture. Also, we find on the result I present, so have different soil moisture in February and August. Is February is on the most rainy season, and August is dry season. So in this case, I think this just one indicator, so need combine with the other data like land cover, or we need to clarify again in the field this condition is true or not. I think this, Laura.
Thank you, Pak Wahyu. So I invite all of our speakers to also reply to questions by writing on the questions and answers box. In interest of time, I would like now to move forward and welcome Pak Muhammad Askari. He's senior staff from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry on the Directorate of Peat Restoration. Welcome back, Askari.
Thank you for the moderators for allowing me to have joined to this session, so that I'll try to make a sharing for all of us today. So basically, my name is Askari, Muhammad Askari. I'm the staff from the directorate which is in charge for the peatland. So we are the unit in Republic Indonesia who's in charge for the monitoring of the peatland area, particularly how to see whether the area is good or not, whether the area is wet or not. So basically, this is just quick update and sharing with the national monitoring system that we already established in our country, Indonesia. This is the update of the hotspot data and the correlation between the hotspot and the pit ground water levels, which is from February to March 2022 in the peatland ecosystem. So basically that we already have set up national system which called CPEC, Sistem Informasi Perlindungan dan Pengelolaan Ekosistem Gambut. So this is the first that you can see, but we have not launched yet. But I'll try to share with all of you. So sorry, there's still some in Bahasa Indonesia. So basically, this system has integrated all of the sub-information system. For the hotspot, we can see the rainfall. This is a dynamic model. And also we already calculate directly on the reduction emission of the CO2 levels. This is from the satellite that we can monitor for the hotspot with the confidence level from the 13th of February to 28th February. You can see the distribution there. And then this is the system that we already installed. We monitor day to day, and some other with the manual one is every 2 weeks for monitoring the water level in the peatland area. So we have installed 10,450 monitoring points in the 3.6 million hectares of the peatland Indonesia. As you can see there, the red color is on the palm oil plantation, and the green color is the forest plantation, industrial forest plantation. This is the system we already have. So it's covered all over Indonesia from Aceh to Papua. And most of them are in the eastern side of the Sumatra and also in Kalimantan. And then if we can see here, so that through the system that we can see directly the water level in the concession area. You can see from the color here, the violet color is 0.0 meters, which is, this area is flooded. And if the color is green, that means the water level is from 0 to 0.4, which is still comply with our regulation. The yellow color here is 0.8 to 0.4 to 0.8. And the red color is 0.8 to 1 meters. And if more are exceeding the 1 meter, so it's the color should be black. And you can see here, most of them are inundated or flooded, and some of them are comply with the regulation. Some other is still on the yellow color. So this is the system all over Indonesia. So we do monitor, as I said, that daily for the data logger, which is automatic, but for the manual one is for every 2 weeks. So that from this system that we can report to our minister, to our president, okay, the concession area is safe. No worries about the, we don't have to worry about the fire spot. And also this area in the South Sumatra and also in Jambi province, also the concession area is okay. They are safe. I mean, the water available is there. And also this is in the area of the West Kalimantan. So that through this system that we can monitor where is the hotspot, whether in the concession area or not. And then based on the data that we have, so the fire spot, it's outside of the concession area. Since the concession area is in the violet color and also still comply with the regulation. But the hotspot is around the airport, Supadio in the West Kalimantan. So this is the system that we already have. This has been installed. For the Kalimantan, also safe. And also that the system that we already have, we have incorporated and integrated with others for the example, fire weather index, where we can use this one to predict for the next 7 days. So you can see here that everything is okay from the area. This is from the 7th March. And this is for the 12th March. So we can see the prediction here. So basically that we have integrated all of the data. And also, if we can see here, there are some red color from the water level. You can see there. That's come from the area, which one from the oil palm plantation. That should be monitored well. So we do the intervention in order to comply with the regulation. This is in the South Sumatra, Sumatra Selatan. The hotspots in the mineral soil, because on the concession area is safe, all of them. and this is also in the South Sumatra, if we overlay with the peatland hydrological unit, so that the hotspot is outside of the peatland hydrological unit. We also have integrated the system to the fire weather index. Before is the drought code, fire weather index, and this is the drought code. So basically that we have integrated system, basically that we can see directly how is the water level today, and how is the hotspot distribution, and how that we can do the analysis to the trend analysis regarding the area. That's my quick presentation regarding this one. So thank you for having me today, and I give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Askari, for showing some of the results and efforts by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Now I'd like to welcome David Large, Professor of Geoscience in the Faculty of Engineering at University of Nottingham. His research focuses on peatland systems and the use of satellite measures of surface motion to quantify peat condition and quantifying the response to peat restoration measures. So the floor is yours, David. Oh, sorry, you might need to share the other screen. We can see the notes and the next slide at the moment.
Is that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect, good. And you can hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Yes. Let me just get rid of the questions and answers. I can see what I'm doing. Right, well, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to present the work that we've been developing on the use of peatland surface motion as measured by interferometric satellite radar. Most of this work has been developed in the United Kingdom and Colombia. Small amount, we have looked very briefly at parts of Southeast Asia, and I will finish on that topic. So, underlying science. There is a three-way relationship in peatland. All parts of that are equally important. We have the hydrology, we have the ecology, and we have the surface motion. That interdependence has actually been illustrated in a recent paper by an absolutely excellent PhD student from Indonesia, Adlan Martiasa, who published it at the end of last year. And you cannot overemphasize all three of these components matter. If the peat is stiff, then it's not resilient to the drop in the water level, it oxidizes, the water level will fall further, it will affect the ecology. If the ecology is right, the surface motion and the hydrology all work together to maintain that ecology. If the peat cannot move, that relationship is lost. And that applies whether you're in the tropics, whether you're in the northern hemisphere. So it does matter, and the motion, although very hard to measure in the field, can be measured using interferometric satellite radar. One of the earlier attempts to do this was the PASSES project, and that ran from 2017 to 2020. It looked at peatland in Southeast Asia over Malaysia and Indonesia, and it did demonstrate that INSAR, using the advanced INSAR techniques, can work over tropical rainforest. It had a number of advantages. You've got a very dense set of ground motion measurements. Typically we're working at 20 meters, 100 meter resolution. You didn't need any ground infrastructure, although you do want to validate it. And it does work with the free Sentinel-1 C-band SAR data, which previous presenters have discussed. The results were good, but it was not possible with the available data to validate them within the time frame of the project. So the project got to its endpoint and I would say kind of stalled at that point. So these are a few of the examples. This is based only on subsidence. So is the ground going up or down and its long-term average rates? And you can see the areas across the tropical forests where we have tropical peat forests, where we have high rates of subsidence, low rates of subsidence, or where they are stable. And you can relate that to the land use activities. Now, that is a very straightforward use of the INSAR technique, this interferometric technique. In the UK and Colombia, we have been developing a much more advanced use of that technique, and that's what I would like to focus on next. So the process that operates is we start off with our stack of ESA-SAR images, and then we put it through this advanced INSAR processing technique, which will work over forested terrains and really any land surface. And from that, we can get two varieties of measurement. We can either get the long-term average trends in motion, is it going up or is it going down, or we can get a time series. And what we have now been doing is we've been taking that time series at either 20 meter or 90 meter pixel resolution, and we have been performing an analysis of that time series. And that time series is really data rich. And from that time series, we can extract a whole range of metrics. We've got the trend. If you have oscillations, maybe relating to summer, winter, or wet season, dry season oscillations, you have the amplitude, the timing, the regularity, the shape, and they all reflect how water is stored in the ground and how that responds to the change in water storage. And then if we strip out these trends, we're left with the variance. And certainly in the UK, that variance represents what I would call weather events. We have then validated that. Our main validation has been in the UK, and we've done that over an excess of 600 sites in the UK, and that then leads on to an application. And the work has been published in Bradley et al. 2021. So I'm going to give you three examples now. I'll start off with the UK, we'll then move to Colombia, and then we'll consider what might be done over Southeast Asia. So for the UK, we're looking at the use of this technique for baseline condition mapping and carbon accounting. This is a largish area. It's about 1,400 square kilometres in the far north of Scotland. We have got three classes here. We have got wet near natural, thin degraded peat, and modified, what I would call marginal shrubby peat in that area. These varieties, or these classes, can all be related to emission factors. And then for any given area or sub-area, we can say what proportion is degraded and what the likely range of mean carbon emissions would be for those particular classes over that area. We can then zoom in more detail, and in this instance we're looking at forest to bog restoration, or commercial clearance of a commercial forestry plantation and then re-wetting. And the re-wetting was performed in 2014-15. In this case, we've defined four different classes. So class 1 is no progress, the peat is in a very poor condition. Class 2 is early re-wetting, which is what you would hope to see quite quickly. Class 3 is late re-wetting with some near natural function returning, and that is recognised by the increased movement of the surface in response to changes in hydrology. And then class 4 has got near natural characteristics. The area is about a bit less than a square kilometre. And you can see that from the pie charts that you very quickly go from a class 1 to a class 2. That process, as you would expect, re-wetting occurs rapidly, but the return to something which is approaching near natural characteristics happens more slowly, with a gradual move to class 3 and probably an imperceptible change, if any, to class 4. And again, associated with that, we can attribute carbon emission factors, which are based on the UK emission factors. So moving on to Colombia. Now, Colombia is interesting. It's kind of somewhere between tropical rainforest in the UK in many respects. It's got the tropical seasonality of the wet and dry seasons. There is actually two dry seasons, but one of them is the main dry season. So on these figures, I've shown two wet seasons and the main dry season with a relatively minor dry season in between. And what we see is we get two very distinct observations. We get one signal that corresponds strongly to the wet season. So it goes up in the wet season, down in the dry season, up in the wet season, down in the dry season, just as you would expect. Then we get a different signal that appears to go up in the dry season. The area we're working on is the Paramo. The soils are a mixture of peat soils and vista soils mainly. And initially you might dismiss that as, well, obviously the dry season swelling is wrong. It has to be wrong because it shouldn't swell in the dry season. That's not true. So what we observe is, and this is a montane area, that the area that corresponds to the swelling in the wet season and down in the dry season, that is the area where the water recharges. That has got a direct response. The area that corresponds to a peak in the dry season, where you get maximum swelling in the dry season, is where the water is stored in the base of the valleys. And that corresponds almost exactly to the geological expectations and the topography of the area. So the area where we get long-term storage in the dry season is in the valley bottoms. So what initially looked like a confusing signal now turns out to be really quite meaningful. And you can then further analyse that to look at the hydrological status of the basins. You can classify these basins, which we have done, but I'm not showing here because that would require a whole presentation on the parallel. But you are able to consider the various qualities of water capture and storage in these systems. So what do we get over Southeast Asia? I'm going to show you 3 measures of surface motion. So the first measure here is automated data loggers. The data was provided by a PhD student from Nottingham, Arthur Ledger. These were positioned, I believe, probably in Malaysia. And what you're seeing here is a nice, near continuous measure of the change in surface motion and the change in the water level. You can then compare that to manual measurements. They compare okay, but the manual measurements, which are really just spot checks against poles, they do vary. It depends what time of day you go in there. Has it just rained a few hours ago or not? So the comparison is a bit variable. And then you've got the satellite measure. And generally that satellite measurement is a good comparison. That signal that we're seeing in red here is as good as any signal we are working from in the UK or Colombia. So in theory, we should be able to operate this process over in Indonesia. However, we need to have, as we do in Colombia, we need to have a good conceptual model of what is happening on the ground. We need to understand what it might mean and why it might vary. And in particular, over tropical rainforest, there's a big question. What we measure here is how the peat moves. And the peat is the stuff between the trees. But the signal comes off the entire surface. It comes off the peat and it comes off the trees. So you not only need to understand how the peat moves, but you need to understand how the trees move and how that might vary, how that might relate to rooting depth, how that might relate fundamentally to the stiffness of the peat and the stiffness of the objects that are moving and their resistance to moving. So there would be a bit of work to be done to implement this over tropical rainforests in detail. But the starting point would be to undertake an analysis of how the signal varies and identify the components of the signal that would matter most. So just to finish off, these are the applications we currently use it for. It should be possible to apply those over Indonesia, Southeast Asia, I believe. The core of this is measures of condition. They are used for carbon accounting, strategic management and loss prevention. And over the UK, we have demonstrated the capacity for carbon accounting. We have used it for strategic management of restoration progress and baseline conditions. And we have also, and although I've not gone into the details here, used it for the fire risk assessment and the assessment of landslides related to possible losses during restoration. So that gives you an overview of what we're doing. And on that note, I'm going to finish. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, David, for your talk. And also thank you, Andrew Sauter, for collaborating in the preparation of this talk. So now I'd like to move to some discussion session. So first, I'd like to ask our panelists and speakers if you'd like to, what are your thoughts on the talks today? And yeah, first, what are your general thoughts if you'd like to share with the audience today, while I share other focus questions? So back as Carrie, would you like to let us know some of your thoughts of the talks today?
Okay, thank you again for allowing me to speak here. So basically, I think this forum is very important to share about the experience that we have. As I said on my presentation, that for the monitoring of the peat groundwater level, we already have the system with so-called the CIMATAC, which is monitor in 3.6 million hectares of the peatland area in Indonesia. So that Pak Wahyu, jadi kita udah punya sistem Pak, punya CIMATAC namanya, tapi that will be in the concession holder. And also for the public area, we already have the Sipalaga, which is monitor the real time, near real time, because 10 minutes later to monitor. So that I would like to encourage also some other countries that already have the peatland to do also the monitoring. And this is, we have used for decision-making process. For the example, if we have the low groundwater level, So we will deploy what's so called the curah hujan buatan. I don't know that in English. To make like a water bombing. I mean, to create the rain, which is implemented by our colleague from the research institute, the BRIN, the BPPT. So that we have the meeting yesterday that Ibu Menteri can directly ask, okay, we can see that the trend on the groundwater level, and also that we can see the rainfall is now quite reduced, so that we can deploy the army and everybody which is in charge in the how to alleviate the fire spot, something like that. So this is a very good discussion, I think, just to share and to encourage everybody. We can learn each other. Thank you. And for the CEPAL that we use only for monitoring on the successful of the rewetting area. We do not use to calculate the emission reduction, because we do believe much more on the real groundwater monitoring to calculate the CO2 emission reduction through rising up the water level. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Askari, for your insights. So any of our other panelists and speakers would like to say some words, some impressions about the talks today?
I would like to say like a brief sentence or summary. So we have seen that we have a number of methodologies that are working, that are sensitive to soil moisture, to fires, to a number of characteristics that can be monitored in peatlands. I just would say that the FAO and UN are doing throughout this decade on restoration work to identify indicators that that must be used to monitor ecosystem restoration in general. So I just would like to encourage everybody that is here to join forces and to identify indicators that we can all agree, indicators that will measure the restoration of peatlands, and that we set targets. So we know towards which objectives are we moving, what is the objective of restoration, and how we can scientifically and technically measure this. I think this will be like a super nice collaborative work about all of us. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Pablo. I also encourage our speakers to feel free to answer any questions that we have in the questions and answers box at the moment. So just raise your hand or activate your microphone if you'd like to answer any of the questions. And also on the discussion, on the focus questions, we also invite participants to add your thoughts and comments into also on the questions and answers box, as we'll see it easier there. So David, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer a question here from an anonymous attendee asking, you know, what is the current state of our work and what are our future plans, and whether this would cover in the Indonesian region. So the current state of the work is considerably more advanced than what I've shown there. In particular, we're looking at the analysis of change, and we're creating probability maps of condition. So rather than thinking of condition as being in a discrete class, we have developed techniques which will portray the maps as probability maps. And that is the basis for analysing change and providing you with a measure of change in which you can say how confident you are. So that work is ongoing, and that should reach completion around October this year. In terms of Indonesia, one of the biggest difficulties we've had is ground truth in Indonesia, and having a really good understanding of how a tropical peat forest will move and how the water will move through a tropical peat forest. And we kind of imagine, I guess, it all goes up and down at the same time, but that really probably isn't the case. Physically, that would be very difficult. So I think the best way to extend our work into Indonesia is collaboratively. I think it would be exciting to compare this work to the other SAR work that's been done on the water levels, and I believe that would be the way forward for applying our work in Indonesia.
Thank you, David, for your answer and sharing your experience. I'd like to hand over to Rupesh for any comments.
Thank you, Laura. So this one is specifically for what Pablo raised, an important point regarding this decade of ecosystem restoration. He mentioned about indicators, and as it happens, we have been thinking about this topic for last year, and C4, along with partners with FAO and many of the people who are present in this panel, participated in that exercise, which we called as criteria and indicator approaches towards peatland restoration. And I don't want to go in a long detail, but as an output, a working paper has come out where we have identified basically 4 aspects of peatland restoration, a successful peatland restoration, and how do we monitor by looking at not only biophysical aspects, but also socio-economic and governance aspects. Then only a truly successful and long-lasting peatland restoration is possible. So I will encourage Pablo and others who are interested to look at that. And the work is not yet done. We are developing sort of a field verification and working towards a field manual that could be very useful for restoration practitioners. That could be a tool that they can apply, of course, with some kind of flexibility to be applicable in different settings, but we are targeting initially in Indonesia, and then that would be a tool towards that common goal of how do we restore and how that restoration can be long lasting. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Rupesh.
Yeah, very quickly, a very quick comment. I mean, it's great that we have these guidelines, this report based on indicators specifically to peatlands, because this is one super important ecosystem among other ecosystems recognized by the UN in the decade. What we are doing quickly now, we are defining some global indicators based on the Sustainable Development Goals indicators. So my idea before was pointing that we have to be able to find good data. First, we have to agree on which is the data that we have to measure, and we have to be able to find this data available in quantity and time. And basically that we agree on how to use this, and that this is representative not only of, for example, soil moisture or water level, which is one important feature, but also about biodiversity, socioeconomic impact, as you said, and some other indicators. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pablo and Rupesh. We have a general question for all of our speakers and all of our panelists. Anyone that wants to take this one, just open your mic or raise your hand. So the question is, do you consider taking into account, for example, Vera BCS methodologies for carbon project accounting? It seems some of these methods could be applied to these standardized methodologies. And also there is like a second part of that question, and when conducting your research, who do you have in mind as your target audience? So any of our speakers or panelists who would like to take that question? Andrew, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, my video won't come on, so you're going to have to just listen to me. Yes, in the UK, we're very much focused on the carbon market. We already have commercial products to help identify areas of the highest potential for generation of carbon credits in the UK, and we're selling that product commercially. But also we are very much focused on trying to use this technology to get into the carbon market. So in the UK, we are starting to discuss this with the Peatland Carbon Code, and we're also looking for a way to work with standardization processes across the world, both on a domestic and a global standard. So we're aware of the Veras standards and the gold standard methods, and we're just basically starting to get on that. But there's obviously lots of potential in that sort of area. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for your answer. Maybe I'd like to also invite Professor Susan Page, if you can hear me. Do you have any comments on the greenhouse gas monitoring part?
Yes, I think that's the next stage in this whole process. Is I think we need a lot more ground data, validation data, but I'm fairly optimistic that we can eventually link, the Earth observation approaches that we've been seeing today to the ground data. Obviously, groundwater level is critical in that. So the CEPOL system can offer, an opportunity there, but we need so much more ground data to actually validate these systems. But I think we will get there. There's, what we've seen this morning is incredibly encouraging, and Indonesia really is leading the way with this, the intensity of monitoring. So, but under the different land covers, under the different management regimes, under the different annual groundwater amplitudes, this is where we really need the data to be able to build some sort of carbon validation, carbon emissions validation system. Thanks, Lara.
Thank you, Professor Page, for your insights. So we have Nyoman Surya Diputra. So I have just activated your microphone. So would you like to say some words?
Thank you. I'm Nyoman from Yayasan Lahan Basah, formerly known as Wetland International in Indonesia. So currently we are managing peatland restorations for the last 3 years, which will be ending very soon, the end of this month. So based on our field experience, we work together with the local community at the ground, and we monitor the groundwater level and also the try to integrate the peatland remapping, together with the polyculture, and also on how to empower the local community with the water-friendly activities like developing floating net cages along the canals that we have been blocked. So what I would like to share with you here, actually, with regard to the how can we gain the carbon from rewetting the peatland from the 3 years project, it is not easy. Because why? Because of the climate, the weather keep changing, and then suddenly, like for example, last week we have a problem with the fire, even though it is not broad, it is only maybe 25 square meter. But it was happening because of the 3 weeks drought. There was no rain at all. Even though we already tried hard to maintain the water table in the canals, but it is again, peatland rewetting, it is not easy. Because we need to integrate also with the other activities, with the other stakeholders. For example, with the private sectors, or also with the communities, and just name it. So we need to look into the whole overall landscape, what we call the peatland hydrological unit. So we cannot fragment the activities in a small part of the hydrological system, but we need to work together, hand in hand, all together. So it is not easy to achieve. So I'm sure this can also be enhanced, maybe for the future projects related to the peatland rewetting, on how to integrate, on how to share our responsibilities with the private sectors, concessions, because it is very difficult. You know why? From what we learned in our project in North Sumatra, actually the domes has a very significant role, in maintaining the water tables. So our project location in North Sumatra where we work together with the local community, actually they are located in the pit dome, which has the pit depth in average of 6 meters. Yeah, but below the domes, there are so many oil palm plantations. So what does it mean? Actually, we are the one, I mean, the community are the one who try to maintain the groundwater level. Yeah, this is benefiting the private concessions, which is located downstream. Yeah, because without this local community who maintain the groundwater level, I'm very sure actually the groundwater table also in the concession area will be much more effective without our interference in the private, in the community land. So that's more or less what I would like to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Okay, so I'm just gonna hand over to a couple of our other panelists. I'm sorry. For quick comments before we move forward to the key messages. So I'm sorry, I can't see your name. Your name on the Zoom is participant.
Thank you. We have the person who raised hand in the participant. While we wait for you to unmute, let's take a comment first from David and then from Andreas. Thank you.
Just like to comment on the last person that spoke there. I think that's so important. I mean, imagine a little patch of land. Actually, the system is interconnected. It's interconnected on a landscape scale. And we have to understand that. It goes back to that first diagram I showed, that triangle of interdependence. And that operates on a very large scale. We're looking at the hydrology of landscapes. And it's about understanding that hydrology to have effective interventions. And doing that in a way that optimizes the use of our landscapes, optimizes the use of agriculture, optimizes the use for carbon storage, optimizes the facility for fire resilience. And without that view, we will really struggle to implement these measures effectively. So I think that was a really good point that was made there.
Thanks so much, David. Andreas, over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I'm actually also wanted to refer to this triangle that David presented, because I think like in today's presentation, we mainly focused on the soil motion and the hydrology. But that I think, especially for Indonesia, it's also possible to look at the ecology, because there was one question that was related, like how are those measurements of soil moisture and groundwater level affected by rainfall? And indeed, I mean, there's interannual fluctuations because of El Nino and global weather phenomena that might affect your trend. So you will need a lot of years actually to detect this trend, which we can do with the tools, but it needs to be taken care of, like if there's fluctuations from rainfall. And so another indicator to look at this in a more holistic way is basically the ecology. There were some slides in the presentation from Mr. Adino Groho on the NDVI, for example, which is a start, but I think we can do more there. Thank you.
Thanks, Andreas. And while we wait for our colleague with the name participant to unmute, you're unmuted. The floor is yours.
Okay, my name is Angel Manembu. Yeah, I'm not how would you say technician in this pit issue, but I look at in general. Yeah, I can see the energy, and I'm so glad there's a workshop with sharing the lessons from all over the world. Yeah, around pit, and I also like when Pak Askari participated in this workshop because I think ownership is very crucial. What I wish is how can you connect, with the technology, from international to local level, like because I did evaluate the pit projects, and then I can see that there are many challenges, there are many questions. So they are in the frontiers of the problems, but they are also part of the solution, you know. So if someone can just bridge that, I don't know, maybe a simple app, yeah, can help the discussion between international, national, and then the local level. That would be great. Second idea is that maybe how the organizer can select what are the field issues and bring that into this international discussion, because that will help the people at the field level who are struggling do the peat restoration, mangrove restoration, but also can contribute to the scientific debate at the international level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now I'd like to hand over to Adam Durant.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Look, I think this has been really interesting discussions. I'll just make a couple of comments in the last to the last kind of discussion point, because it's really rich and useful. The Pak Nyoman who mentioned the importance of communities, it's absolutely critical, the importance of local people and the involvement of the people around and living in and on the peatlands. Government people, managers and others have a responsibility and a role as well, and they can provide technical support and funding and so on. So there is many stakeholders in this, and we need to recognize that. And I think the government is doing a great job with many of its activities. There are always opportunities for improvement on this, but by working together, as Pablo said, we can really improve. This particular workshop was about the biophysical monitoring and the technical tools. We did not attempt to discuss or include the community part, but that is another very important aspect, and we could have another whole webinar on that if people want to. Because I think their role in managing and protecting the peatlands and also using them in a sustainable way is important if they want to maintain their livelihoods. We need to recognize that too, in a way that doesn't damage the peatlands and can help restore the peatlands. And I just want to mention a really good link that we made with BRGM's work, where they had people measuring and maintaining these field stations in the field where the peat was being monitored for the groundwater level going up and down. And some of the local farmers were getting paid a subsidy to check the equipment, that it was functioning, and the batteries and so on. And some of the farmers there, actually, we did a nice little case study where the farmer learnt what the groundwater level really meant from watching the machine and getting the measurements and taking the samples. And then he related that to the field data. When he could tell it was really dry, he told the people in his village, do not use fire at all for burning. It's too dry now. The machine is telling us. And it really was a very realistic kind of thing of how this local monitoring with the local people can be very effective. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the government to expand on these tools and share this information to local people. And I think we do really have an opportunity to make some major changes through this. Thanks very much. I'll stop there, and maybe Pak Askari, but I pass back to Laura if she wants to choose who speaks next. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Adam, for the insights. Yes, Pak Askari, please.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me again. Thank you. So basically, that's a very good comment because we cannot separate between the biophysical aspect to the community. So that should be the interlinkage between them. So it's 100% agree with the comments that has been given also from Gerald Adam. So thank you. So basically that what we have done basically from policy to action, not just talk, but we want to do something in the field. So that's what we want to do today, basically sharing what we have. And also that for the monitoring of the peatland area, we have already installed many of them in the area that has been do the intervention, but I cannot share to the screen. If I may share the screen, I can show the picture. Just quick, 1 minute.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So this is one of the monitoring system, which is easily can be seen directly by the community. So we do not talk about the sophisticated using the iPhone whatsoever. because one of the big challenges in the peatland area that you will have no signal. There is no signal because that's in the forest, in the remote area. So we have installed this one. This is automatic fire generating signboards, which is using the buoyancy. It will rising up or going down depend on the water level. So this is a kind of how to bring from the sophisticated to the real action in the field. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean that we have to consider, because we cannot just see, say using CEPAL whatsoever in the field. No, that will not work. But also that we have developed the software system. I mean, like the handphone. So the people who has the handphone, so they can open our website to do the monitoring real time, not just talk, but they can do. They really do the monitoring, so that they can see in some areas, like in the Kalimantan and Sumatra, there's a station blasters. So that if you move on the area, so it will come directly. There's a hotspot on your left side. It's saying so. And we have done that in several areas in Indonesia. So that's why I see that this forum is a very good forum to share between the experience from others. And we love also to have learn from others. And also that we use the CEPAL. But now that we use CEPAL, I mean in my unit, only for monitoring of the successful of the revetting areas, because we can show to the particularly the concession holder, this is your efforts. So, and also we can say you have installed the canal blocking, but the soil moisture is not there, and the monitoring also is not there, so they cannot lie. They say to us, okay, the monitoring water is very good, but using the CEPAL, there's no soil moisture increase there, so there's not really good data. And we include all of the data, not just the monitor of the soil pit and groundwater level, but also the rainfall. So we have integrated all of the system. So this is, I do believe this one of the example that we can share to other. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Askari, and also for informing participants of the tools you have developed and have available online. Okay, so let me just check the questions again.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I think we can. There are some questions directly for Pak Askari, and we can carry on also in the question and answers board for any questions that you may have. Please have a look at also the answered questions. But I think we can already go now for the key keynote. How to say? Sorry, key messages from this session that Rupesh Pomia from C4 has kindly agreed to give. Over to you, Rupesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And I must thank all colleagues from FAO for inviting me to be part of such great panel, a lot of experienced people, and to just listen in and soak in all this information. It's been personally very rewarding. And this last bit of discussion was very enriching, as Adam rightly mentioned. So it's a difficult task when I see it to kind of capture everything and share the key messages from a panel and the discussion that was so wide and so deep. But I'll try to give my best. I'll not try to summarize what you all presented, but try to give a little bit of overview where we go from here. So it's well understood with the amount of people participated and the discussion we had that peatlands are very important globally, not just for Indonesia, but also for global climate change and various services these incredible ecosystem provide. These are very, very important. And information about them, where they exist, is crucial to know about their status, about their conditions, and then to come up with some sort of actions towards whether it's protection, whether it's management, whether it's conservation, and how do we go about it. These are important topics, and we touched about it today. Once we know where peatlands are and their condition, then we can plan that action, and that's where monitoring comes into play. So monitoring as our discussion today talks, and then this is one of the word highest frequency word that we use today in this discussion. Monitoring allows us, it is kind of a feedback mechanism to tell us how we are doing, how peatlands are doing, how our actions are working, or whether we need to make any changes. So that's what monitoring tells us. A time-bound methodology, a process that gives us a view of these incredible resources, these ecosystems, their conditions. That's why monitoring is important. There are various ways to do that, and we discussed today some of the tools and some of the advancement in terms of research, where peatland monitoring can be advanced, can be possible, and we discussed at least in the first presentations we had about the remote sensing tools. How do we use these tools, these advancements in science, to better understand these peatlands? Because we recognize the data about these peatlands are very, very limited, very scarce, and that's one of the key gaps to allow us to take those actions which are needed. And in this, we discussed the important role of FAO's CPAL platform, which is open source, which has capability with cloud computing to analyze a lot of remote sensing data and come up with these analytical maps. Particularly, we talked about the moisture map, soil moisture maps that are easy to generate, which has a very high correlation with the groundwater levels. So this is one example of such tool where advancement in remote sensing, where availability of these images can help us to determine what are the soil moisture levels in the peatlands. Again, I'd like to thank Adam for highlighting that today's discussion was more on the biophysical science. That was very important to note. It's not that peatland restoration is possible just by looking at biophysical side, but this is an important place to start. And moisture is the key ingredient. When we talk about peatland restoration, the tagline is keep peat wet, and we all must try to do that. It prevents fire risks. It maintains the ecological functioning and ecological integrity of the system. It maintains the flow of ecosystem services that we all depend on, be it as a habitat for biodiversity, as a store for carbon, or various services it provides in terms of livelihood security. So peatlands are very important for not only meeting the greenhouse gas reduction or emission reduction targets, but also for meeting sustainable development goals. And this is where I think Indonesia provides such a great example. And we are very, very thankful to have intervention from Scary from the ministry, and the point that he mentioned about policy to action. This is the key, because policies are made, they are often based on good research, but if they do not translate into action, then the real impacts cannot be felt. And there were a lot of questions and very enriching discussions. How do we connect that? So from knowledge, from research, to policies, to action. This is not seems like a straight line, but we all know and agree that it is not an easy thing to achieve. And it will require a lot of concerted efforts. It will require these kind of sessions, these kind of discussions when people, stakeholders, people who value these ecosystems, whose livelihood depends on these ecosystems, they come together and discuss these to not only identify the challenges and think about ways to address those challenges, but also to identify the opportunities. Where are these key opportunities that we can build? What are the knowledge resources that can be utilized by all these stakeholders to come up with these solutions, to come up with these answers, to come up. This is an incredible example again by Pakistani that he showed that in remote areas, you cannot always depend on these high-tech solutions of having your cell phone or a signal. You have to come up with this kind of easy, cheap, and dependable solutions where you can just use the buoyancy principle works everywhere. It is not hostage to canopy cover or signals. So by using that, you have to have this creative solution that can indicate the fire risk of that ecosystem. And then it is very intuitive. One looks at it, this color scheme tells you if it's at the red and no fire to be used. So what I'm trying to get here today is that this is how we need to work with the advancement in technology, like what David was mentioning, using approaches where you can measure the movement of peat to determine the losses in moisture and whether it has subsided and all that, and combining with open source platforms like SEPA, these data that has been collected, and then having local data from the field data to calibrate those models to kind of give that confidence, to reduce those uncertainties. Those things are very, very important. And no one agency, no one team can do it. This has to have a combined joint effort, whether it's data coming from these monitoring points coming from government, or in case of Indonesia, they have such vast network, such good data repository coming from these areas, such a short interval. Is there a possibility to combine these with existing tools? Is there a possibility where these data sets can be used to refine the models that can be applied? So I think we need to explore these possibilities. We need to have these I would say discussions and these kind of conversations where we see what is available and whether that can be used to solve a problem that may be faced by another group of researchers. So it's not always lack of data, it's also excess of data. And that is very important, that when we communicate, when we converse, when we establish this dialogue, these kind of, the impediments are broken, and there is a little bit more clear articulation of that our goals are similar. We are working towards the same mission, same vision, and how do we achieve that? Before I end, I also like to just quickly mention about some of the opportunities that we have, not only by using high resolution remote sensing data, like someone mentioned about planet data to refine our resolution, or also from the field data that's coming to better our models, but also there is a possibility of capacity building. So when all these stakeholders come together, and there is this, we have researchers sharing incredible kind of the advancement in research, how that can be, that knowledge, that capacity can be translated or transferred to people who are working in the ground, so they can use these tools to the best advantage of solving their own local problem. Because that, if that link is created, then it allows to have flexibility in the system. Then it necessarily does not need to be only Indonesia or one province based, but then it has the flexibility that it can be used by many various people who are dealing with these kind of challenges, and then they can also play with it to tweak it to apply to their own system, their own specific problem. So once we invest in that capacity building, that capability to try to sort out these challenges, then we kind of empower everyone, and then I think we move towards the success of peatland monitoring or peatland restoration. And lastly, I just want to mention, I answered about this criteria and indicator approaches from C4, but that's where we are trying to get into look at all aspects, not biophysical, but also social, economic, and governance issues, because truly peatland restoration, a successful or sustainable peatland restoration is only possible when we address all these different components, these drivers, these actors. When they come together, then we are able to make progress in that direction. So thank you all. It's been very, very enlightening to hear you, and I'm very, very honored to be part of this group. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Rupesh Pomia, for these important messages. So I would just like to remind everyone of next steps. So we'll be sharing a summary and recording of this webinar, and also expect our invitations to the sessions in French and Spanish on peatland monitoring. And also we might have some technical partner exchanges at the end of the year. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you all for participating today. We have a short feedback form that would really help us evaluating this session. I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you for all the efforts in putting this webinar together. Also thank Pak Askari from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry for your messages and presence. Pak Budi from BRGM, also thank you for being here today. Also thank you to the partners of the Global Peatlands Initiative, in particular UNEP, and also thanks to our generous donor, the International Climate Initiative of the German government. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon. I hand over to Maria if you have any last messages.
I think all has been said. Wonderful summaries, wonderful presentations, and so active discussion. Actually, I was looking at the number of questions answered already, I think over 30 in total. So this was a very useful, exceeded our expectations, to be frank. We're really happy to have all of you here, and looking forward to further exchanges and working together on this topic. Thank you so much.